Hey Gen Mexers, I am excited for today's video. I am here in Ajijic, Mexico, and it is an area with one of the most established expat communities in Mexico, maybe in the world. And we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of living in an expat-heavy community. So some people that move to Mexico know that they want to live in a really expat-heavy area, and some people know that they want to live in an area where they're the only expat or the only foreigner, and it is a very Mexican culture. So in this video, we're going to kind of look about what are those pros and cons, and also I want you to be adding things and having a hearty conversation down in the comment section, because this is really a personal choice that each person can choose, because there are areas that are 100% or 99% Mexican, and there are areas that are probably as high as maybe 15 or 20% foreigners. So what are the big benefits of living in Ajijic specifically? Because there has been 70 years probably of an expat presence here, is that you can become a member of the Lake Chapala Society. And the Lake Chapala Society is just a great asset for this community, and it exists because there are so many foreigners in this community. There's a couple of other things that are similar around Mexico, but this is definitely the biggest thing of its type. And I have Steve Balfour, who is the president of the Lake Chapala Society. He is with me today, and we're going to talk about some pros and cons of having a heavy expat influence in the community, and also a lot about what is the Lake Chapala Society.
Hello, I'm Steve Balfour, the president for the Lake Chapala Society. The Lake Chapala Society is an organization made up largely of expats from really throughout the world, though. We have about 2,500 members, a little bit lower than what we had before COVID, and we have about 1,500 additional people who are not members that use our service on a regular basis.
So as I mentioned earlier, having the Lake Chapala Society available is a huge, huge benefit to being around other expats. I'm actually going to have Steve talk a little bit about the history maybe of the Lake Chapala Society and how this expat community formed here. And we'll talk about, of course, other pros and cons of being around other expats that are outside the Lake Chapala Society. But because we're here and we have Steve, let's talk about why there's so many expats here in Ajijic.
So there's so many things that attract people here to Lakeside, and everybody's looking for something different. Some people are coming here for the cost of living. Some people are coming here because of the weather. I mean, the gossip or the rumor around town is that this is one of the 3 best weather places in the world. And don't know what they use for a qualifier for that, but that's what people here love to say. We're located right on a lake here, surrounded by mountains, so that really helps a great deal. And some people come here because of healthcare. There's 2 brand new hospitals in town here, some other medical facilities that have been built as well. So there's a tremendous resource to medical facilities at a more affordable price than in the United States. We really attract people from all over, and everybody comes for a different reason. Some come for the culture, some try to bring their culture with them. There's a little bit of everything here. A lot of people say Neil James was the founder. Actually, not quite. There was another group before that. We actually originally started in Chapala before moving here. And now we're located, though, on the grounds that belong to Neil James. And she was a wonderful expat who was very committed to this the community here. She loved children in particular and seeing them develop all their skills and abilities. Art was one of her favorite topics. So many of and there's a lot of famous artists right here in this community. Many of those artists went through her program when they were young children, and she was alive and here holding this program for them.
So let's dig into those pros and cons. And Steve was a little bit cautious around this because one person's pro is another person's con. But let's talk about, you could live in an area that is purely Mexican and you're the only gringo there, or you could choose to live in an area like San Miguel de Allende or Ajijic here, where there is a larger expat community. And I know a number of people, actually Craig and KJ, who are members here. I've got some videos that I'm working on with them, but they came here because it was a soft landing. And so that's definitely a pro about being around other expats, is that when you get to Mexico, things are different. How do you even pay your electric bill? You'll have a lot of people around that can explain things like that. Let's see from Steve, what are some other good things about having other foreigners around you when you're in a country like Mexico, where probably realistically, probably don't speak the language that well.
The language is obviously the big issue to many people. How can they get by here? And there's so many different places you go in Mexico that have varying degrees of English-Spanish relationships. Certainly a place like Puerto Vallarta, there's plenty of English there. San Miguel has very good English there. And here in Ajijic, there's a lot of English. I know people who've been here for 15 years and can speak maybe 6 words of Spanish. But it's really up to the person coming here to decide how saturated they want to become with the community. How much do they want to be part of the community? There's a lot of what we call here fraccionamentos. In the United States, you might call them condo complexes or subdivisions or what have you. So some expats come, choose to live in that setting where it's all people much like themselves coming from Orange County, California, or wherever they're coming from. You know, that's what they're looking for, and they tend to stay amongst themselves. There's others like myself who I want to live in a Mexican community. I want my neighbors to be local Mexicans because we can learn from each other.
One other thing I wanted to note is that as a whole, Mexican society is very accepting of everyone, no matter what it is. If you're from somewhere else, if you live a different lifestyle, it is just very acceptable everywhere. It's just a value of the Mexican culture. So you don't have to worry about fitting in or being welcomed anywhere in Mexico because of the way the Mexican people are so welcoming.
We have plenty of classes here. We have Spanish in action. We have conversational Spanish. We have more advanced Spanish classes. For those that want to learn, there's plenty of opportunity here, and many people do. Our monthly magazine, Conexiones, which is available online, all the articles in English and Spanish. We encourage people to try reading the Spanish one first and then go over to the English one and see how well they're picking it up. But it's really up to the person coming here to decide how saturated they want to become in the community and judge your language from there.
So this is one of those great points that for some people, being around other English speakers is very important. And for some people, not being around other English speakers is very important because it's almost a little bit of a crutch. If there's no one else around speaking English, you better learn Spanish. And it's a way to make sure that you learn Spanish because that's the only game in town in some of those smaller communities. Like I said, some people really, really want that. And some people want that softer landing and having life be a little bit easier, especially as we're getting a little older. It's harder to learn another language, but we also have a little more time to learn it. That could be a pro or a con. So I want to interrupt this video with a special service announcement, and that is that in Mexico, you don't need to be in an expat or foreigner heavy community to find good ice cream. That is just a value across Mexico. So don't worry about that. Do worry about pushing the subscribe button, the little bell icon, and the word all to make sure that you are notified of future videos. So let's get back to our conversation now. So this is actually kind of one of the cool things about being in such a large expat community is the Lake Chapala Society really does interact with the community and help people in terms of the library. And there's quite a number of things there that the expat community being organized like this can bring to the Mexican community. So I want to hear a little bit about kind of the programming, both for expats and for locals.
I look at it as a collaboration. When I first started here as a board member, then executive director, then president of the board, people said, Steve, your job is to build bridges. I don't buy that concept. A bridge implies that there's a permanent obstruction between 2 points. And what is that permanent obstruction? Some people would say it's language. That doesn't need to be the case here in the area of Ajijic. So I look at more of as a collaboration, people coming together, sharing experience. We have as much to learn from the Mexican community as they may learn from us. So we have a lot of mentoring programs. Certainly, as I said, the Children's Art Program is one of our most famous programs. We have over 80 children per Saturday that come in and learn from some of the masters here. We have a photography class. We have a chess club. We have all these different programs. We have women's empowerment groups. We have embroidery groups, both for the Mexican community, but also there's one called Needle Pushers, which started by Neil James, and they make clothing for local children. And we really try to engage as much as possible between the two communities. It's even more than just two communities, but getting people collaborating together and seeing how we can make a better community for everyone.
My name is Paula Mahadevi. I'm originally from Colombia and I moved to Mexico 10 years ago. I have been in Ajijic for 9 years. And I love LCS because it's such a beautiful place to be in community, to have many different activities.
When we moved here nearly 6 years ago now, I've always been a potter and a mosaic artist professionally. And when we moved down here, I wanted to continue on with ceramics. There wasn't a studio here, so I brought mine down and I donated it to the Lake Chapala Society. So all of this is my California studio. Set up shop in this garage. And we started off with about 5 people, and now we have about 30 every month. It's a really good thing for people to do when they're old because it's very creative and it's very simple. It's not like painting where you have to really get in there and do some things. With pottery, you can make a simple pot the first day and go on from there. And I have some people in here now who are really at a professional level, and I have some people in here who are rank beginners. And occasionally we have children. In fact, we'll have children's summer camp in here later on in August. The main goal that I have here is not just to make pots, although there's nothing like having your hands in mud. But my other goal, and the reason we have large tables out there, is to develop friendships. Because everybody here is from somewhere else, and everybody here wants to make new friends. And this is a great way around a table when you're making a pot to chat and develop friendships, and that's exactly what's happened. We have a lot of now nice, deep friend relationships that have grown out of mudlarks.
I've had a chance to walk around the grounds here at the Lake Chapala Society, and really it's a number of old houses with amazing, gorgeous grounds. So I would come here just to hang out amongst the lush greenery. But I want Steve to tell us a little bit about why people from the foreigner community, I guess, spend time here. What are they coming for?
So the expats that are coming here, and again, coming from throughout the world, they're coming for the various programs. We have over 100 programs per week that take place here. Everything imaginable, anything that could be your interest, whether it's board games, card games, but then yoga, chair yoga. We also have concerts here, and we have a Sunday morning program, Open Circle, that is a great hourly presentation with a different topic every single Sunday. And then there's just a variety of opportunities there. There's English classes, there's Spanish classes.
So one of the things Steve mentioned was the hospitals here in Ajijic. Guadalajara has probably the best hospitals in the entire country, maybe in the entire continent. There's hospitals and also like all the services that are around those in terms of nursing services. So here in Ajijic, there are some elder care facilities and things like that, but also just restaurants. So I'm going to have Steve talk a little bit about the benefits of being in an area where services have built up to serve people that are from outside the country.
So touching on the restaurant point first, because that's the easy one to do, there's so many restaurants here. Somebody said there's over 200 restaurants right here in our small community. And so you could be going out to dinner in a different restaurant almost every night and not get bored. And there's a tremendous selection, no matter what you want, whether you want Thai food or you want seafood or steaks, Mexican food, and there's a whole variety here. A lot of continental type restaurants, and a lot of the people that live here do go out to eat a lot. That's sort of a favorite pastime, especially groups of people coming together, nice social setting, and the prices are more affordable here than in the United States, of course. There's some places here in Mexico, such as San Miguel and Puerto Vallarta, that are the more expensive in Mexico City. This isn't the cheapest, but it's certainly not the most expensive, so it falls kind of in the middle there, I guess.
One thing that we aren't talking about in this video, and I just want to acknowledge it, is that we're not looking from the perspective of locals about the number of expats in an area and how that will impact an area. I do have another video that I'm working on that is with a researcher who is specifically researching the impact of expats in Mexico. So if that video is ready, it's going to be up here. But in the meantime, let's look at the Ajijic sign. Just another kind of aside is that there is an impact from people, foreigners moving to an area, especially people who are more wealthy. And if you're getting your temporary or permanent residence, you will have above average wealth probably than most Mexicans, just because of the way that residency system works and the requirements to get into the country permanently. But I also want to recognize that there are many wealthier or middle upper class Mexicans that are having a similar impact. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just something that I want to kind of put out there for people to think about. Is there's the impact of foreigners, but also the impact of the kind of the separation of the upper and lower class in Mexico. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about the pros and cons of for you choosing where to live. So let's get back to that conversation.
As far as care, as you said, hospitals, there's plenty of medical facilities here, but there's also a lot of private doctors that work more one-on-one. The one thing you want to do if you haven't come to Mexico yet and you're thinking coming here, you really need to look at your health care and what is your plan. Do you have a great insurance plan that'll be acceptable in Mexico? Or many people here, in all honesty, pay cash for their procedures, and the cash is sometimes not as bad as the copays in the United States, you know. But there's plenty of medical services, plenty of doctors. There is assisted living. Now, Mexico has a different culture on caring for elders. And the United States, we're famous for somebody gets old, like my mother when she had Alzheimer's, we put them away in a senior care facility and where they get maybe great care, but it's kind of like putting them away is what it feels like. And it's very difficult on both the parent as well as the whole family. And here, Mexico's more about taking care of their own. So families live together, the grandparents live with their grandkids and everything. So, and they care for each other. It's very common when somebody goes into the hospital for somebody from the family to go and stay with them in the hospital and help them out and care for them. But for the expats, there are facilities here that you can find. There's some very good doctors that have set up some facilities. And so those things are here to be found, but it's best to explore that before you coming here if that's really important. There are many people here who live on the Medicare, maybe some minimal other insurance coverage from the United States. I can't speak about Canada because I've never lived in Canada and I'm not as familiar with their systems there. There are systems in place here. You just need to check first. Obviously, if you have pre-existing conditions, you need to explore that a little bit more. There's several pre-existing conditions here which are well taken care of. The Mexican government wants you to have care. The services are there, but explore them before you come here.
So I will be working on a video. Actually, I'm going tomorrow with someone, Carrie Moon, and she is kind of an elder care specialist, and she's going to take me to a couple different facilities that have developed here. And that is definitely a benefit of Ajijic, is that expats have lived here for such a long time that those services have built up to serve them, because that is not something that is available in Mexico, because people take care of their family. So it is a service that is unique to foreigners, and it is building up, and it's starting to build up a little bit in La Paz, but because La Paz is kind of a newer destination for foreigners, everything's not all built in already versus, somewhere like Ajijic where there are many, many specialists who will help you with this. One of the things is expenses. A lot of people are concerned about that. An area like Ajijic is going to be more expensive than an area that is more of a Mexican town that doesn't have all these services that everyone really wants. So let's chat a little bit about the expenses of living in a expat community.
There's been a lot of talk about what does it cost to live in Mexico, and there's a lot of false information out there. So be careful what you learn from Facebook or some of those other social media settings. You really have to do a good due diligence here. Some people have suggested, or it's been very widely suggested, that you can live here for $1,500 a month. Well, maybe. It depends upon what you want your lifestyle to be like. If you're selling a home in the United States or in Canada and you're buying a home here, so you don't have a mortgage payment, you don't have rent, and mortgages down here are not common. They're extremely limited. People pay cash. It's a cash society. So if you're buying your house cash, so you're not paying that, yeah, maybe you can be in that $1,500 to $2,000 a month category, again, depending upon what lifestyle you want. As I say, people love to go out to dinner a lot here and love to get involved in things. Other people question about, well, do you get bored down there? And there's so many things to do here. There was an old joke that, you know, people go to Ajijic to die. Then they get so busy volunteering, they forget about that. You know, it's a very active community. People are engaged in so many different things. There's the Rotary Club. There's so many different fraternal organizations, the Masons, Shriners, and so on and so forth. There's the Garden Club and all those. But there's also just groups of friends that come together and work on projects together. Many of those projects to help local communities. There's a lot of pet lovers here, so there's a whole bunch of pet care organizations, nonprofits that help cats, dogs, and what have you. So there's a variety of things you can get involved with here, and how you live that, though, really dictates your cost of living. If you're the type that cooks most of your meals at home and stays at home, yeah, you can do much better. Although restaurants are not expensive here. Or if you want a more grand life, then you certainly can have that. Some people come here, and in this particular community here in Ajijic, they'll live for a period of time without having a car. And that's fine. There's plenty of buses around. It's walking. It's a very safe community. Everything has its degree of safeness everywhere in the world, but it's pretty safe here. Women way outnumber men here, so especially with expats. So you'll see a group of 7 women out having dinner in a restaurant and all walk off in their own direction home at the end of the dinner. That all feels comfortable for people. It takes time to get used to it, but you get used to it real quick. Cost of living, you know, do you want to drive a really nice car? Mexico's not about showing off. You don't need all the jewelry and the label clothing and the fancy car. Go with a more simpler car and you can make things work. But plan your budget before you come.
So that is another one of those pro and con things, is that when you're in an expat or foreigner friendly area, there are lots of restaurants. They are little more expensive than what would be typical in a smaller town, because they know they're serving people from outside the country who have a bigger budget. And your friends are going to be going out and doing all that stuff. So if you are on a tighter budget, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to live in a community where there are a lot of foreigners, because they're going to want to go out and you're going to want to go out with them and do a lot of these things that might be stretching your budget a little more, versus if you were living in a smaller town and all your friends were Mexican, they wouldn't be pushing to go out for expensive drinks on a Friday night or something like that. It'd probably be more like, let's hang out at my house and have some beers. That could be a pro or a con depending on where you fall. It can be a little bit tricky as a foreigner in Mexico, as a resident, as a legal resident in Mexico, but not a citizen. Your involvement in government and specifically politics is very limited. Definitely, even in La Paz, you know, I know my subdelegado and we talk and we have projects together and whatnot. But if you're kind of the only expat, the only foreigner in town, you might not have the representation that you desire, versus being a big group of people, that group has a little more power in terms of interacting with government. So let's have Steve talk about that.
So one of the advantages of having 2,500 members plus 1,500 non-members who use our services, it's really a great collective of people, a great chance to collaborate. And we have tight relationships with the mayor's office here in Chapala. Chapala is the main municipality here. There's a string of pueblos, if you will, that stretch out from Chapala. So for us, Ajijic is one of those pueblos that's part of the municipal government of Chapala. We have a seat at the table there when there's important meetings and what have you. We have a great relationship with the mayor, and the delegado is just 2 blocks away. He's the person that represents our pueblo. We also have a great relationship with the U.S. Consulate's office. We meet with them and have conversation with them very regularly, help with passport processing and what have you. So there's a variety of things that, because of our numbers, we're able to really do a lot of collaborations. We have great collaboration with the American Legion here as well, which is another large expat organization, you know, U.S. veterans and what have you. So, I mean, there's some synergy and energy to that, and it's more organized here than in some of the other tourist places. And as far as other pueblos, so the prices are a little bit higher here in Ajijic possibly, but 2 miles away is San Juan Cosala, where you can go into a restaurant and spend half as much money and get just as great of a meal. And then we're surrounded by other pueblos like that really can offer a lot.
Now, I want to be clear here is that being at the table with government doesn't mean that the expats are running the show. I think that is one thing that we've seen is sometimes foreigners come in and want to change the way they want to bring home with them. And that is not a good look at all. And it'll be incredibly frustrating if that is what you're out to do. So I'm going to have Steve tell us a little bit about when people come here that have maybe a different expectation. As we're wrapping up the video, I want him to kind of talk about setting your expectation as a good expat in Mexico.
Certainly, so coming from a place like the United States, but not just the United States these days, politics have gotten to the two extremes, it seems. Down here, we don't get as involved with the politics, the political side of things, but we do get involved with the government. And the biggest decision you make when you're coming to Mexico is what are you going to do about your legal status? You can come down as a tourist, but it's for a limited period of time. Strongly discourage trying to violate that, go beyond and just not renewing it and think you've just run away. It doesn't work that way. There's many times where you need paperwork down here. So going either for a temporary resident permit or permanent resident permit, and really look out the qualifications for both, because many people, myself in particular, find it much easier and cheaper in the long run to go for the permanente right away and just get that from the beginning. That way you don't have to renew it every year. You can move on to a Mexican citizenship and a passport, but yeah, it gives you some perks, but mostly the biggest perk is you can vote in the elections, and you'll have to decide for yourself whether that's important enough to you. There's restrictions around automobiles and cars, what you can and can't bring down here. It takes research. There's plenty. Look on social media, YouTube, Facebook channels, so on. So there's so many chat groups. Be careful of what you hear in a chat group, though, because you'll get 10 different opinions on the same topic, and they all are opposite each other. So it's crazy. But I think that dealing with that issue and then coming here and deciding, do you want to try to live in Orange County, California here, then you're moving into a fractionamento with walls around you, maybe guards at the gates and so on and so forth. I personally don't know why somebody would come here for that, but it's here. But really getting involved with the community and coming here to learn the culture that it already exists. Now, this culture is very open. Remember, expats have been coming here for about 100 years. So it's very common. It's not like, well, how do they look at us? No, they look at us as part of the community. We're all equals here. We all want safer communities. We want cleaner communities. We want healthy communities for everybody. So, again, that's that big collaboration word that I'm really high on. And I think that if you really spend some serious time, with inward thinking about what is it you're looking for if you're considering a move to Mexico, and then make your plan, your life plan based upon that, you'll find it here.
Well, thank you, Steve, for being with us today, and thank you for being here. And of course, go down to the comments below and add the pros and cons that you're seeing that we might have missed, because there's so much value down in the comments from people who are looking for information or have information. And I really enjoy going down there to chat with you all. So up next, I've got a couple of videos with other expats who've moved to Mexico, or if I've got one ready, I've got one about healthcare here in Ajijic. So check those out next. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Hasta luego.